The rain soaked through my dress as I stood outside the gleaming glass doors of the Grand Plaza Hotel, makeup running down my face and my body aching where the security guards had gripped my arms. Through the windows I could see Victoria laughing with her elite circle, probably mocking how I dared to show up at her prestigious industry gala. "Ma'am, you need to leave the premises," one of the guards warned, his hand moving to his radio. I smiled and pulled out my phone. "Actually, I own the premises." The guard's face changed as he read the email I showed him. The purchase agreement for the Grand Plaza Hotel, finalized just last week through my investment firm. Another acquisition Victoria didn't know about. Yet. "I'm so sorry, Ms. Jean," he stammered. "We were just following Mrs. Harrison's orders." "I know," I said quietly, "and tomorrow she'll learn about following mine." Inside, Victoria held court at the center of the ballroom. Her red designer dress probably costing more than she used to make in a year as a secretary before she married Richard Harrison, CEO of Luxe Beauty, and mysteriously took over his position 6 months later. "Call my car," I told the guard, "and make sure you're available tomorrow morning. You'll be escorting Mrs. Harrison out of a different building." The guard nodded, finally understanding who really signed his paychecks. As I waited under the hotel's awning, I watched Victoria through the windows and remembered how this all started. 3 years ago, she was just another employee at Luxe Beauty, sharing a cramped office with me in accounting. We were friends then, before she caught Richard's eye, before the whirlwind romance that turned into a corporate takeover, before she decided her former friends were beneath her new station. "Your car, Ms. Jean," the driver said as he held an umbrella over me. It wasn't the hotel's car service but my own. Another detail Victoria had missed while building her house of cards. As we pulled away, my phone buzzed with messages from the board members. Everything was in place for tomorrow. Victoria's perfect world was built on carefully crafted lies, embezzled funds, and sabotaged careers, including Richard's mysterious mental breakdown, which led to her taking control. But she'd made one crucial mistake, underestimating the quiet accountant who noticed the numbers never quite added up. My phone rang. James Wu, Richard's former CFO and my key ally in this takeover. "Victoria just announced the Asian market expansion," he said without preamble, using the funds he embezzled from Richard's personal accounts. "Perfect timing," I said, watching the city lights blur past my window. "How's Richard doing?" "Better, now that he's off the drugs she was slipping him. The doctors say he'll be fully recovered soon." "Keep him hidden until tomorrow," I instructed. "Victoria thinks he's still in that private facility she chose." "The evidence?" "All here," I said, patting my briefcase, which was protected from the rain that had ruined my dress. Bank transfers, forged signatures, security footage from Richard's house the night of his breakdown. Tomorrow her perfect fairy tale ends. I ended the call as we pulled up to my penthouse, bought through a shell company Victoria never bothered to investigate. She was too busy playing CEO, attending galas, and destroying anyone who remembered her past as a secretary, like having me thrown out of her party for daring to mention how we used to share lunch breaks. "You're nothing," she'd screamed as the guards dragged me away. A pathetic nobody who couldn't even get promoted from accounting. If she paid attention to those accounts instead of just shopping from them, she might have noticed the pattern. The strategic acquisitions, the quiet buying of shares, the careful consolidation of power that culminated in yesterday's final purchase, controlling interest in Luxe Beauty itself. My phone buzzed again, a message from my brother Michael, who had been Victoria's husband before Richard. She'd abandoned him for a richer model, never knowing he was the silent partner funding my takeover. She just posted photos from the gala. His text read, "Should I tell her she's celebrating in your hotel?" "Let her enjoy her last party," I replied. "Tomorrow she learns what real power looks like." I changed out of my ruined dress and looked at the corporate documents spread across my desk. Victoria's signature on papers she never read carefully, clauses she was too confident to notice, the evidence of her systematic drugging of Richard, and the offshore accounts where she'd hidden her stolen millions. "Ms. Jean," my assistant called. "The board members have all confirmed for 9 a.m., and Richard's doctors cleared him to attend." "Perfect," I said, picking up the photo from my desk. Victoria and me at the Luxe Beauty holiday party 4 years ago. Both of us just employees with dreams. Time to remind Victoria where she came from and what happens to people who forget their past. Tomorrow the rain would be the least of her problems. Monday morning arrived with an orchestra of camera clicks as Victoria strutted into Lux Beauty's headquarters, blissfully unaware of the storm about to break. Her assistant scurried behind her, carrying 3 designer bags, all purchased with company funds, according to the forensic accountants. The board meeting's been moved to the main conference room, her assistant stammered. What? Who authorized that? Victoria snapped, turning sharply on her $1,000 heels. I did. She froze at my voice. I stood in the doorway, wearing a suit that cost more than her monthly embezzlement, her face contorted with the same disgust she'd shown last night. Security, she shouted. They report to me now, I said with a smile, watching her perfect mask crack. Along with everyone else in this building. The conference room doors opened to reveal the full board, James Wu, and sitting in the center seat, Richard Harrison himself, clear-eyed and very much not mentally incapacitated. Richard? Victoria's voice shot up an octave. You're supposed to be drugged in a private facility? He finished. Amazing what happens when you switch to untampered water. Victoria's designer bag slipped from her shoulder. This is impossible. I am the CEO. Actually, I said, stepping forward and sliding documents across the polished table. As of Friday, you're nothing. The board members, many of whom had suspected her rise to power wasn't entirely legitimate, leaned forward to examine the ownership papers. This is a joke, Victoria laughed, though her hands trembled. I control the majority shares. Through shell companies funded by stolen money, James interrupted. Would you like to see the transfer records? I clicked a remote, and the screen filled with transaction histories. Victoria's face paled as she recognized her own handiwork, the theft she thought no one had noticed. Let's start with Richard's drugging. I continued, changing slides. Your private nurse was very cooperative once we showed her the evidence of prescription fraud. She's lying. Victoria turned to Richard. Baby, you know I would never. Save it, Richard said coldly. The blood tests don't lie. Neither does the security footage of you switching my water bottles. The board members muttered as video played, showing Victoria methodically tampering with Richard's drinks. Her composure cracked further. Then there's the money, I said. 15 million transferred to offshore accounts, another 10 million in consulting fees to companies that don't exist, and my personal favorite, the $3 million business retreat that was actually your secret vacation with the CFO of our biggest competitor. You've been investigating me, she whispered. For 2 years, I nodded. Ever since you had me demoted to the basement office for asking too many questions about the accounts. Her eyes darted around the room, searching for allies. She found none. Even her most loyal supporters couldn't ignore the evidence mounting on the screen. This is revenge, she hissed, because I married Richard after Maiko. This is justice, I corrected. For everyone whose careers you destroyed. The employees you fired to cover your tracks. The people you stepped on climbing to the top. You have no proof. Actually, Richard stood up. We have every proof, including your confession. I never confessed. You did, I said, pressing play on another recording. Right after having me thrown out. Amazing what people say when they think they're untouchable. Victoria's own voice filled the room. That little accountant better keep her mouth shut about the old days. I didn't drug Richard and steal his company just to have some basement-dwelling number cruncher ruin everything. The color drained from her face as her drunken rant continued, detailing every crime in her rise to power. Your resignation letter, James said, placing it before her, or would you prefer we call the police? You can't do this to me, she whispered. I built this company. You stole this company, Richard corrected, and now you'll leave it. Unless you'd like to discuss this with the FBI agents waiting downstairs. Her hand shook as she reached for the pen. I'll fight this. With what money? I asked innocently. Your accounts were frozen an hour ago. Those designer bags you're carrying, they belong to the company now, along with everything else you bought with stolen funds. As security waited by the door, the same guards who'd thrown me out in the rain, Victoria signed her name one last time. I made this company what it is, she said through tears. No, I said, standing. You nearly destroyed it. Now we're going to rebuild it, starting with reinstating everyone you fired to cover your crimes. As she was led out, her perfect world crumbling with each step, I caught her final whisper. How did I not see you coming? Because, I replied softly, you were too busy looking down on everyone to notice who was rising up. 6 months later, I stood in my CEO office, formerly Victoria's luxury suite, watching the rain fall on the city. The same weather as that fateful gala night, but everything else had changed. The door opened and Michael entered with a newspaper. Thought you'd want to see this, he said, handing me the business section. Former Lux Beauty CEO pleads guilty to fraud, the headline read. Below was Victoria's mugshot, a stark contrast to her once perfect image. How's Richard doing? I asked, setting down the paper. Better. The therapy's helping him process the betrayal. He's thinking of starting a new skincare line, one that actually helps people instead of just making them feel inferior. A knock at the door interrupted us. James entered with our quarterly reports. The numbers told a new story now, one of genuine growth instead of manipulated success. The Employee Assistance Program is showing results, he reported. Turns out when you don't spend millions on executive luxuries, you can actually fund worker benefits. I smiled, remembering Victoria's notorious tantrums over wasting money on employee healthcare. Now, Lux Beauty was becoming known for its workplace culture instead of its scandals. Ms. John, my assistant, appeared. The women's shelter representatives are here for the job training program. Another change Victoria would have hated, using company resources to help domestic violence survivors rebuild their lives. The conference room now hosted support groups instead of champagne parties. Did you see who's leading today's session? Michael asked as we walked to the meeting. Through the glass walls, I saw a familiar face. Victoria's former assistant, now running our corporate outreach program. She'd been the first person I promoted after taking control. Sarah's doing amazing work, James commented. Hard to believe Victoria used to make her cry daily. The meeting room was filled with women learning makeup artistry and business skills, real tools for independence, not the fake empowerment Victoria used to sell. My phone buzzed with a message from Richard. The new ethical sourcing program is ready to launch. Thank you for making this possible. As I typed a reply, another notification popped up, a message from Victoria's prison email account. I finally understand what real power looks like. It's not about crushing others to rise higher. I learned that too late. I showed the message to Michael. Think she means it. Does it matter? He asked. Your version of success is already proving her wrong every day. Looking around at what Lux Beauty had become, a force for genuine change rather than just profit, I had to agree. Victoria's reign of terror had transformed into something beautiful, just not the way she'd intended. The rain stopping, James noted, glancing out the windows. Good timing, I smiled. The employee appreciation picnic starts in an hour. As we headed downstairs, I passed Victoria's old portrait in the lobby, now replaced by a wall of employee success stories. Real people, real transformations, real beauty. You know what's ironic? Michael mused. She threw you out in the rain to protect her perfect world. And that rain washed away her facade, I finished. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying someone's world. It's about building a better one, he nodded. Outside, the sun broke through the clouds as employees gathered for the picnic. No designer outfits, no social hierarchies, just people sharing food and stories, exactly what Victoria had tried to prevent. I took one last look at the message from prison before deleting it. Victoria had taught me an invaluable lesson. True power isn't found in crushing others, but in lifting them up. The rain had stopped completely now, leaving everything fresh and clean, like Lux Beauty itself, reborn from the storm of Victoria's destruction into something genuinely beautiful. Ready for the staff announcement? James asked. Yes, I said with a smile. Time to show everyone what real luxury looks like, taking care of each other.